From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Morning Line with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Morning Line. Nick Barris here with you on a Thursday. Got a really worthwhile show this morning. I hope you join in the conversation. We've got a very special guest. Well, actually, two of them are special guests, but one from out of town that you don't often get to sit down and talk with. We're going to talk about why this individual's here and what his organization's all about, which we've done before. This is the Urban League. And many of you who watch this program have come to know, of course, Clifton Harris, Urban League of Middle Tennessee president, CEO. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
It's good to have you on. And we have a special guest who will be arriving. He's very busy and he's coming now, but the National Urban League president will be here, Mark Morial.
Mark Morial himself.
He's in town as a keynote speaker for one of the events.
For our Equal Opportunity Day luncheon today, where we will host about 500 business leaders and community stakeholders from around the city, around the region, to celebrate our 58th annual Equal Opportunity Day luncheon.
That's great. And so he's got that on his slate. He is leaving here right after that to go for Jesse Jackson.
Jesse Jackson's funeral.
Yeah, 2 weeks of celebration of his life as well, and he'll be going up there for that. I know both you and he have met him, and we're going to talk a lot about Jesse Jackson this morning, but it's good. Before he gets here and we jump all into it, I'll let you just hit for our viewers so they understand, again, what the Urban League is all about and how, of course, we have our branch here. It's a nationwide organization.
It is a nationwide organization that's been around since 1910, Nick, 116 years old. And locally, we're celebrating 58 years of service to Middle Tennessee. Yeah.
And the idea is it empowering economic,
it's about
social?
Empowering people of color and other disenfranchised groups to have access to economic self-reliance, power, parity, and civil rights. We do a lot of work in the area of workforce and economic development. Yeah.
The workforce and economic development. In Nashville, you and I have been together on this program and talked about certain areas that are disenfranchised that try to get the growth and the attention that they need. And just since you last came on, until we're joined by him, probably in our next segment, we talked about certain portions of the city of Nashville that we want to see more economic growth. You talk with council members, mayors, and how that all comes about. I'm just wondering, as you look at the city of Nashville and the continuing growth and the regions outside, are you seeing some of that happening now? The leveling of the playing field to some degree?
Yeah, well, we're seeing, that's why we do the State of Black Middle Tennessee every year, in order to benchmark and all the progress and all that we're making. And we're making some progress in the area of getting people access to livable wage jobs. Last year, we touched 8,000 people, and we were able to get 1,800 of those 8,000 people access to livable wage jobs, and now we're working with about 6,000 of those 8,000 people, getting them upskilled and reskilled and ready for careers in high demand industries.
Okay, so talk just about that, and the idea of how you help these individuals, how they come to you, and then I know with all of the relationships you have within the business community, that's kind of how it works, right?
That's kind of how it works.
So when they come to you, or when there's an organization or a group of folks that are hoping to improve their lives, they contact the Urban League. They talk about how can you help. And then how do you do that?
So many businesses have job openings, as you know, and they have skill sets that they're looking for. And the Urban League pretty much matches individual skill sets with the employment opportunities that employers have.
Yeah, but sometimes to do that, they need the education.
And so sometimes, well, not only sometimes, but a lot of times, we have to spend time making sure that people get the right credentials, upskill and reskill people, so that they can qualify for those positions. It's all about merit, at the end of the day.
What would you say the state of the African American community is in Middle Tennessee right now?
So we talk about it in the form of a pie chart, right? And so right now, people of color are missing 35% of the pie, right? And so that equates to, for every $100 and all that, white Middle Tennesseans have. Black Middle Tennesseans only have less than $20, right?
Out of every
$100.
Out of every $100, $20 of it is set aside for that.
Right.
Okay, so obviously the imbalance there.
So we're looking at how do we close that disparity and get people access to high-demand jobs in healthcare, IT, advanced manufacturing, construction, hospitality, and business services.
Yeah. You know, right now, the job market in general has tightened up.
It is tightened up.
It's tough. A lot of people losing jobs across the board because of, you know, artificial intelligence. And boy, I'm just wondering, as you look ahead, and I don't know, the types of jobs you just talked about are going to be affected by this. I mean, you know, there are going to be more and more people losing jobs because of this.
Yes.
You see what AI can do?
So AI and all is here.
I know.
And we have to embrace it, and we can't be afraid of it. And for people that said, well, I don't know what to do about AI, well, I remind them, if you're Googling anything, you're using AI.
Right, exactly.
You know?
Well, I used to say that. I'm like, well, I don't know anything about AI now, so I'm going to Google what is AI, and I'm using it.
You're using it. And so it is here, and it's here to stay, and it's going to change the way we do business all across our nation. And so we have to find ways, you know, make sure that people are upskilled in those areas. And then there are a lot of areas where AI is not going to replace people, you know, in various trades.
Yeah.
You know, right?
Yeah.
AI can't do plumbing.
No, there's certain things they can't do.
Right. Certain things it can't do. It can. The technology of it, you know, can make it more functional and more efficient, you know, but there's certain things you got to have humans for.
Right. Because I think at some point there's going to be an AI anchor out there.
Yeah.
But no one can mess with you and ask crazy questions like me. Find a computer that's going to do that. Now, before our guest does come, and we'll be talking to him a lot about his experiences with Reverend Jackson, just want to get your take. You've met him. I had covered him when he had been to Nashville on several occasions. My colleague Jennifer Krause had interviewed him on several occasions. Just talk a little bit about your interaction with him.
So my first interaction with him was when I was in college. You know, we belonged to the same fraternity, Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and I had a chance, you know, to meet him, and he spoke, you know, to a lot of students, you know, there on campus. And then the second time I had the pleasure of meeting was right here in Nashville at an event, you know, that he came to speak at one of the churches. And being a minister myself, I had a chance to go back into the green room area and sit down and literally chat with him.
Yeah, see, that had to be pretty
and
neat.
it was pretty special.
Had he run for president at that point?
He had already run for president, and this was just before he had gotten sick. You know, right? And he found out that I was with the Urban League, and he encouraged me, you know, to stay the course and to make sure I look at, you know, the work that I had to do as a journey and not a marathon. Yeah. I mean, a journey, you know, and not a sprint, you know, right? And so he was very encouraging, very uplifting, and had good words of encouragement for me.
He was a protege of Martin Luther King, of course, and he was in Memphis, was he?
Yeah, he was in Memphis.
And all of that, and the impact it had on him. I just remember following him, and I was from the Chicago area originally myself, anyway, and that was where his Rainbow Coalition.
The Rainbow Coalition
came about.
Is what he's known for.
The thing that's interesting about him is that it was odd to me later, and again, as everyone ages, they slow down. You know, he had some illness, and there was some other.
I'm slowing down.
I know, we both are, and controversies. But one thing I just remember, even, you know, young growing up, hearing. He was just so articulate and out there, and before many others came about, and I think took a page out of his book, was really outspoken. Very much outspoken. And again, protege of Martin Luther King.
But he was the right man for the times. A lot of people have been able to stand on his shoulders.
Yeah, right.
And I remember the scene and all when President Obama was being sworn in, and the picture and all of where Jesse Jackson and all was looking at that and taking it all in and crying, you know. That was, I know that had to be very touching, you know.
Don't you think? Because I mean, there had been reports, you know, that there was some discord between Obama and prior to that, whatever. I could be jealousy, whatever it was, you know, and yet he had to know. And I think later, and of course we saw what President Obama said in the aftermath of his death, that they had made things up. But you're exactly right. One of the images I see that have been played over and over again since Reverend Jackson died was him crying as he watched him being sworn in. And I guess, you know, the time was right when President Obama was elected, I suppose, okay? But when Jesse Jackson ran, a black man in America running,
we were in a different era.
I mean, that was a big deal, and it was a shocker how it came about. And you know, I mean, so he paved the way.
Yeah, he paved the way.
And so with
and you know, and I will always remember him as a drum major.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just you know, out front.
That's exactly
making it happen.
Yeah. You know, as I look,
it takes grit.
Right, it does. I just wonder, in your mind, you had people like Jesse Jackson, we obviously had President Obama and Martin Luther King, and then in communities there are leaders like yourself. But as you see people like him pass away and move on, I'm just wondering about the next generation of leaders. How do you feel about that? Where is the next Jesse Jackson or Obama going to come from? And are there some that you have in mind right now?
Well,
I know they're out there.
There are young people that are doing some great things, right? I don't think that we give our young people enough credit now for the stuff that they are doing. It's easy to look at what's not being done and criticize that. But for those that are doing some really positive things, that's what we have to embrace. And the next Jesse Jackson, or whomever that will be, whether it be male or female, they will rise. They will rise and they will lead this country, and they will lead their people, and they will rally around initiatives that will unify our nation.
Yeah, and they're out there. I mean, when we think about how far things have come, we talked about when Jesse Jackson ran for president, okay? How out of the blue that was, and how for the time something, but we just had an African-American female run for president. So, I mean, a woman who happens to be black.
Right.
So that's the path we go to moving forward. I just wonder about the leaders as it happens, even the leaders here in Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, so, you know, we have a lot of progress that we got to make, but we've made a lot of progress as well. And so every time I go into the boardroom, I'm always advocating for equality as well as diversity.
All right, a little bit more about Mark Morial. Have you met him before?
I have met Mark many a time.
Okay, so National Urban League president. He was mayor, I guess I'd forgotten this. He was mayor of New Orleans from 94 to 2002, right?
Yeah, and he did a great job.
Yeah, it says, I mean, he led what they call a New Orleans Renaissance at the time. Left the office with a 70% approval rating, graduated from the University of Pennsylvania.
Can you imagine that, being a politician and having a 70%?
You don't see that. I don't care how good a politician you are. No one, especially,
70%?
You may be up high right when you're elected, but by the time you start leaving, it's down. He left office. Why did he leave office? We'll ask him that. Why?
I mean, you have to ask him that.
You know, I don't know, something like that. But how big a deal is it having him come to Nashville?
Awesome. It's a big deal.
Why so? And I don't know when the last time the head of the National Urban League came to Music City, whoever it may have been.
Yeah, because he's going to be announcing that the National Urban League Conference is going to be held here this summer.
Oh.
You know, right?
Okay.
And so that's one of the things.
At the convention center?
At the convention center. That's one of the big deals of why he's here, today. And he's going to issue a call to action to defend democracy, demand diversity, and defeat poverty. Right? We're going to continue with that theme. And Mark sits at the helm of a national organization that is having impact that serves over 3 million people annually. Right? And so we'll let him talk about some of that, but and he has 92 Urban League affiliates across the country that he's responsible for and he's leading, and I am proud to be one of his affiliates and have the opportunity to serve up under him. I'm learning so much.
Yeah. So how did it work out that they ended up choosing to come to Nashville?
So we had to put in a bid.
Okay. What other cities were in the bid?
Atlanta was one of them.
Okay.
I don't know the other cities.
Okay, but there were bids. I mean, it's a major convention. You're talking about a lot of people coming.
Cities. And our Conventions and Visitors Corp helped us make the application. And we were the right city for the right time.
When is the convention?
The convention is going to be July of 2026, July the 29th through August the 1st.
And this is where representatives like you from every urban league
across the country,
every city.
We're expecting 10,000 people to be here.
That's a biggie. And there's one every year, right?
One every year. One every year. Last year was in Cleveland. The year before that was in New Orleans. And the year before that was in Houston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the Urban League get how much you have to deal with politicians across the board, but
I have to work with whoever's in office. That's why we remain nonpartisan.
Okay, so what happens when it becomes election time?
We focus in on the issues.
Okay, so you talk about issues, but you don't endorse candidates.
I don't endorse candidates. We talk about the issues, and we talk about how the issues are going to impact all people in our community, and then we have conversations with those individuals that are running to see where they stand on the issues.
Okay, but no endorsements.
No endorsements.
But in as many, you can talk about what issues are important.
Right.
And the folks who are within Urban League and follow it can see, all right, well, they're for this issue.
Right.
This is a candidate that probably,
that's right,
one way or the other.
Right. They're for this issue. Here's where they stand on this issue, and here's how this issue impacts you positively or negatively. We want to make sure that we're always informing people so that they can make the best informed decision about who they want to vote for.
Do you think there's been a change in any way over the last 4 years, last 8 years? Just we see what's happened with a lot of colleges and universities, and how the term affirmative action, which
right,
you don't really hear anymore along those lines.
Right.
Why do you think that is?
Because we're in an era now where I think people are feeling threatened about becoming traditionally have been a majority and now becoming a minority, and people are fearful of a lot of things, and as a result of that, they're rolling back things that levels the playing field, and cause for inclusion. And that's why one of our mantras, one of our core pillars, is demand diversity. Because when you have diversity, you have diversity of thought, and all research shows that when you have diversity, it also improves the bottom line of any corporation positively.
Right. Yeah, we've talked about that before, and it's true in a newsroom or anywhere.
Right.
First of all, I think
different ideas is a good thing.
Yeah, well, right. The business you're in, I think, in some ways, can be reflective of the community that you happen to live in. But even if it's not, even if I'm in a community that happens to be predominantly African American or predominantly Caucasian, I don't care. I want to have diversity on my staff.
That's right.
Period. Because it's different points of view. I like to think I'm a pretty enlightened guy, but there's all kinds of stuff that I pick up from others' points of view.
That's
because
right.
they had completely different life experiences that I can't relate to.
Life experiences, different cultures, things that they have encountered, that we may never know. But because we have interaction with them, they can educate us, how to look through a lens differently. Okay,
listen, we'll take a break. We're checking on Mark to see if he's still caught in this traffic. Was he coming from the airport?
No, he was coming from the hotel.
Well, sometimes you never know. I mean, downtown. But hopefully he'll join us before the end of the program. If not, we'll continue our conversation about the Urban League right after this. Stay with us. We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. You just got off the phone with Mark Morial, National Urban League President.
Yes.
He's on his way right now. The traffic downtown, no apologies from him. He'll join us. We'll bring him up when we can. But we were just talking about, this is fascinating to me, just the whole idea of what's happening culturally right now, and the whole idea of how things are being taught, and whether or not we, will teach history the way it happened, or teach history in the way that doesn't upset people.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about there?
I do know what you're talking about.
Okay, so that to me is what just baffles me. I mean, if we're talking about slavery or something along those lines, I don't like what I am learning, but I want to learn it.
Right.
If it makes me feel a little lousy, and I don't take responsibility for slavery. It's something I thought was horrible, but I mean, I don't understand the concept of, well, we don't want to acknowledge, these horrible things because it makes us feel bad now. That's crap.
Well, I
mean, come on.
It may make you feel bad, but it's still a part of American history.
And learn it so that we don't repeat it.
That's right. That's right. And I remind people all the time that, all history is God's history. At the end of the day. And so we have to address all of it, and the more we are able to talk about it, the more comfortable we can be in talking about it, and the more I can begin to see where you're coming from, and the more I see where you're coming from, the more I can appreciate your perspective, and we don't always have to agree to agree.
Yeah, right.
And sometimes, people are going to find themselves on the opposite end of an issue, but there still has to be a common ground.
situation we were talking about in education right now, and various universities and the like maybe being threatened to lose certain types of funding because maybe they have equal opportunity programs in place that they don't want, and they just feel that first of all, would you argue that there still needs to be some of these equal opportunity programs in place because it is not a level playing field?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
All right. Again, now the others will say, and in the current administration, they'll say, look, it just has to be across the board, and you get it on your own merit, or you don't get it, and we don't have to have anything special in place. That kind of says that they don't acknowledge that there could still be racial bias out there.
That's right, and there's a lot of racial bias and all, and diversity, equity, and inclusion has always been about merit, right? And it has actually benefited the white female more than any other people group, right? And so I'm not really sure what people are tremendously afraid of.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, again, diversity increases a corporation's bottom line.
Well, isn't that true? When DEI started getting cut from some of these universities that just rolled over instead of battling it and cut it out of the program, a lot of the corporations started investing in programs to try to get these young people educated in this way, because they recognize the universities provided a pool of diversity for them that might go away now with DEI vanishing from many universities. And you ask why, and it's because their thing is not about, hopefully their hearts are in the right place, okay?
Hopefully.
But the fact is, these CEOs, they're not like, oh, well, we want to do the right thing. Maybe they do. We want the bottom line to be good. And they know the diversity in their workforce creates a better bottom line for them. They're going to make more money, right?
Yep. I mean, out of all of this, here at the local level, we had to take a $5 million hit as a result of it.
You talk about that. What do you mean?
As in our revenue stream.
Oh, okay.
Right. But we're finding new ways to make that up.
You mean Urban League?
The Urban League, yes.
Okay, that $5 million was coming from
corporations, institutions, right? And we have contracts and all that.
So were these corporations that were giving money to you, and then they realized we're being looked at for supporting DEI, and that's what the Urban League's kind of about? We better not do this, or maybe the feds will take a look at us and hammer us. So again, chickens that just rolled over and played dead. Like, none of these people stand up for anyone.
And we understood. We didn't call them out on it, because I can only control what I can control. And so we found new ways to generate revenue, and we're stronger for it.
Okay.
And now we're finding that a lot of corporations are finding new ways to do what they've always done, but it's just under a new process.
That's the trick. It's not under DEI, but it's kind of like, well, it comes down to, I mean, for their hiring, they can go about, they have their own means of deciding who they hire,
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, now there are going to be some, they just want to address this, that still, it's an age-old argument over affirmative action that, well, I know that I was in a position at work and I was more qualified, and they ended up giving it to an African-American colleague that was not as qualified. That's what they're going to say because of because of DEI or affirmative action, whatever you want to call it. And they're like, well, that's not fair to me. What would you say?
I would say, that you have to look at both people equally and take away the names and take away, whatever color they are, and look at what they have done on their resume or their accomplishments, and then choose the best person from there. Interviewers have their own biases.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And we can't change that. We can challenge a person's biases, but we can't change their biases. They have to change that on their own, right? And I don't know if that particular company was trying to meet a quota, but if they were, then that's on the company, not on the individual.
Right.
The individual is applying for an opportunity just like anyone else. And so they get the job over another person. I would like to think that they're getting the job based on their qualifications and their merits.
Right. Okay. Now, would you say sometimes...
That's how we present people to corporations that we work with. Here's the person that we think is best qualified for the position that you have.
And sometimes diversity simply comes into play on that, in that if you happen to have a workplace where it's predominantly one race,
right.
okay, and then you have applicants coming in and you're looking to get diverse. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm thinking if they're all white in the office and then you have some applicants and there's some whites and some blacks and they're both qualified, mm-hmm. if I'm in charge, I'm hiring the black. And I'll tell you why. It's not that the whites, there's anything wrong with it. I'm going to look at them, all things equal. I'm not going to bring someone in who's incompetent.
Right.
But as long as they're competent, I'm bringing in the African American, or if it's the other way around, it's a fully black office. And I'm going to bring in that white, only because I want diversity. So I know they came from different backgrounds. That's going to serve me better in the workplace.
Right. I have Latina and whites on my staff.
Right. Okay.
We're predominantly a black institution, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to turn away someone because they're not the right color.
Mm-hmm. And DEI, I talk about this. I don't think people oftentimes who are against it realize who it has benefited the most.
Right.
They talk about how it benefited white women.
And the other way I also ask people about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Which are you against? Are you against diversity? Are you against equity, or are you against inclusion? Which one of those do you have a problem with?
Right.
Or maybe it's all of them.
It's become
and
a
then tell me why.
Yeah. Diversity, equity. Yeah. Are you against diversity? Are you against equity? Are you against inclusion? Individually.
And if you notice,
it's because of what that phrase represents to some now.
Right. And I always say that out, Nick, because to shorten it has become a weapon. Mm-hmm. Right.
It is. It's a phrase. It's a trigger word.
And we need to make people hear it.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good way to look at it. Listen, we'll take a break. We'll be back with more right after this. All right, we're back on Morning Line. Still waiting for Mark. Hopefully he makes it by the end of the program. If he doesn't, a busy guy, Mark Morial. He's the National Urban League president, the Urban League of Middle Tennessee president and CEO, of course, with me this morning, Clifton Harris. And I guess one reason Mark's coming is he's speaking to your group this afternoon. Okay, then he'll be leaving to go to Jesse Jackson's funeral in the Chicago area.
That's correct.
But the big deal is he'll be coming back this summer in July.
This summer in July, a week-long conference. We will be hosting 10,000 people that will be joining us from across the country. All of my colleagues from around the nation, as well as their team and subject matter experts. And
can people register? We just put that up.
People can register to attend. You don't want to miss that. We're having an open welcome reception at Assembly Hall.
Okay.
And we anticipate that this will be a $3.3 million spend to
it's a big
the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, sure.
It will be a direct $2.2 million for direct spending to hotels and restaurants and transportation groups, and it will generate support over 600 businesses, as well as generate somewhere in the neighborhood of about $819,000 in tax.
To your knowledge, is this the first time Nashville's hosted this?
This will be the first time that the Nashville or Tennessee has had an opportunity to host.
So you were in the middle of all this. I mean, as CEO,
definitely in the middle of all this.
Are they calling?
I think they are.
Okay, well they may be upstairs and they'll bring them on down hopefully, and so our crew is upstairs waiting for them. And that should be fine. But what should you say? 1 minute. Okay, we'll see how it works. So. Getting them here, what did you have to do? Because you said other cities were in competition. This is a big convention. It brings a lot of money. Nashville's a great place to have conventions, but what was it like? Pitching it and getting
pitching it was a lot of fun. We had to go do a presentation with our Convention and Visitors Bureau in Cleveland, mm-hmm. And we got to announce it while we were in Cleveland last year. Which was a lot of fun. We had to highlight all of the different venues, here in Nashville. We also brought in my colleagues from Knoxville, Memphis, as well as Chattanooga, to be a part of the package. Mm-hmm. And we had to get support from our governor as well as from our mayor.
Okay, so and they were all in support of this.
So they all were in supportive of it. And we were able to show them that Nashville has a rich history, Tennessee has a rich history, and our Music City Center was more than accommodating, for a conference of this size.
Okay, and what comes out of these conferences every year with all of them coming together? What is it? Is a platform developed? Is there some new direction? This is going to be happening during an election year, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. It advances the mission of the Urban League and creates economic dignity, among people groups. It has an economic driver where we can drive down on workforce. We can talk about AI and teach people best practices around AI. We will highlight generational wealth, and we will teach people what that means and what that looks like. We will also get into housing and economic development and show best practices in that area, bring subject matter experts in from across the country.
Right. And there's always a bunch of speakers, right?
A lot of national speakers in plenary sessions. And it galvanized, hopefully, for us, when the conference is gone, we'll have an army of folks that are fired up and ready to go and help empower communities and change lives.
Okay, so the speakers that all come, and you've said it before, you don't endorse candidates. Will there be any politicians speaking at this event? Do you invite them if someone wants to come? Do they? Whether it's Republican, Democrat, whatever?
Yeah, if we invite one party, we invite the other party. Right, and so both parties have an opportunity to come and to address, our audiences. But typically, we try and stay away from that.
Okay,
right.
I just didn't know if that would be something. But that's maybe happened in the past some. But you don't anticipate that being the case.
I don't anticipate that being the case here for us.
Okay, but you could make the argument that the Urban League and what you're doing now with all that's happening in the country, this meeting could be as important as any in your history.
Absolutely, because when we're talking about access to health care, this is an important meeting. When we're talking about workforce development, this is an important meeting. And Mr. Morrell is here now.
He is. How about we take a break? Can we do that, Kristen? And then we'll take a really long segment as we have him for the last portion of the program. We'll take a break, be back with an additional guest right after this.
All right.
All right, we're back. Full house now. We've got it. Of course, Clifton Harris and I've been talking, waiting for Mark Morial to join us.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. And listen, I know the
Sorry
traffic.
I'm late. We got a little traffic, traffic circles and
You've got a
around.
busy day ahead of you. National Urban League president. So it's a pleasure having you, president and CEO, here today to speak to the Urban League. Not long after that, you're going to make your way to Chicago, I guess, for Reverend Jackson's. I want to talk about that, but real quick, we were talking about your past history. You were mayor of New Orleans from 94 to 2002, right?
Yes, right.
Younger man back then. And you left office with a 70% approval rating. Who leaves office with a 70% approval rating?
By the grace of God, but I will tell you, I had a final act, and the final act was we relocated the Charlotte Hornets to New Orleans. So we brought the NBA in my last 6 months. So I think the final act really
it's a big deal.
Was directional because it was a big deal to bring the NBA back to New Orleans, and it was a big deal to relocate a team from Charlotte to New Orleans. So I had a great experience leading the city. Being the mayor of a major American city is hard work, but you gotta love people.
Yes.
Because if you don't love people, you can't lead them. And that's basically been a mantra of mine, or basically a guiding principle for me throughout my entire life and throughout my entire career.
All right, listen, since we just have this one segment, I want to bounce around some different things. But we both were talking about how the National Convention's coming here this July. Talk maybe a little bit about how Nashville was chosen for this and what
this
you like.
Man is the primary reason why we are here. And he doggedly invited and pursued, but also because of the work he's been able to do at the Urban League of Middle Tennessee, the work he's been able to do in the economic empowerment arena. We choose cities for a number of reasons. One, the strength of our affiliate. Number two, the atmosphere and the commitment from the business and political community, and I think that's also present here in Nashville. And then this is Music City. Right. This is a cultural city. Our folks love culture, love music, love entertainment. Over the last several years, we've been in Cleveland, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We've been in New Orleans, my beloved hometown. We've been in Houston and in Washington, D.C. These are the places we've been on over the last 5 years. But I got to tell you, the interest in Nashville is high.
It is high.
So, Clifton, you got to be ready. We got lots of people coming.
Lots of people.
But we also want the people to know that what's unique about the Urban League Conference is there's going to be a family and community day. There's going to be a part of this for the people of Nashville and the entire region.
Okay, you guys are going to have a good time.
Yeah.
You guys will have a good time, and it's a pleasure having you.
Got a lot of work to do. We have some support to build. We've got some money to raise. We've got some groundwork to lay. So we'll make an announcement today and really begin the process of building the coalition we need to be successful. I expect, 10,000 plus people.
Okay.
I expect maybe several 100,000 who see it online. So it's not just the audience that will be here in Nashville, but it's going to be the audience all over the world, because we have people and we have members all over the world.
Is there one primary issue that you hope will be addressed at this? I know there's going to be many, but what's your focus?
I believe very strongly that economic and pocketbook issues and the condition of America, but I also think democracy and voting rights and the protection of democracy is high on the minds of people and high on the minds of urban leaguers. So I think it'll be central to the discussion, and we always have high-profile speakers, national speakers who will come, and local speakers who will come. So we're going to make sure this is going to be a blockbuster event. So we want people to pencil it in last week in July.
Be there.
Hold the date.
Yeah, sure.
You got to be there.
All right. Talking about big events, you're going to be making your way to Chicago later today. We were talking, I had the opportunity to interview Reverend Jackson on occasion when he'd come visit here. Yeah. And, I read The Children and the sit-ins here and Reverend Lawson, and he would talk about Reverend Jackson back in the day being his point man.
Yes.
His point man for the peaceful protest, and the role of all of that. Gets me chills talking about it. You've met him on several occasions. You had talked about your interaction with him. But how about you and your relationship with him, and talk a bit about how you're heading up to Chicago?
I owe so much to Reverend Jackson for being a role model for my political career. And in a sense, Jesse Jackson transitioned, or didn't transition, he added the ethos and the principles of civil rights and equal opportunity, and he brought them to presidential politics. His 84 and his 88 campaign paved the way for many, many others, and also inspired my political career. I was a Jackson delegate to the 84 convention in San Francisco. I was a very young 20-something-year-old. And then in 1988, the convention in Atlanta. And I think we saw in Jesse, what really resonated with me was his Rainbow Coalition concept. The concept of an America and an American democracy that had room for every community. And to me, this is what the nation needs today. I think the nation is tired of division, tired of infighting, tired of partisanship and sectionalism and racism, and really wants a direction that says this country's got enough power, enough wealth, enough ingenuity, enough intelligence, enough drive for everyone to prosper. And that's at the heart of the mission of the National Urban League. Our focus on mainstreaming from an economic standpoint the African American community, but we believe fundamentally in this American future that is multiracial and that is democratic.
It had to be amazing for you to be there as a delegate at the time. And one of the images that we were talking about earlier that we saw in the aftermath of Reverend Jackson's death was him there watching President Obama's inauguration in tears.
He paved the way for Barack Obama in this sense, because Jesse Jackson's candidacy broke the ice. Demonstrated that an African American could run not a symbolic candidacy, not a protest candidacy, but a serious candidacy and win between the two campaigns, maybe a dozen primaries. It meant that when Barack Obama decided to run, people were not going to think of him as a symbolic candidate. They were not going to think of him as, oh, let's wonder if a black person can run a credible campaign for president. The way was paved for him. And in many respects, Reverend Jackson's candidacy and his voter registration work in the 80s also helped Bill Clinton in a very tight and tough election in 1992. So Reverend Jackson's impact, I mean, he's been singularly, I think, the most prominent civil rights leader in America over the last 50 years, but also he's been one of the most iconic personalities in America because he did work on the international stage. He did work in civil rights. He had an impact on politics. He impacted boardrooms in America with his effort to try to create economic empowerment for urban communities and for black communities and others. So he leaves a huge, if you will, hole in leadership in this country. And I think that I'll be honored next Friday to be in Chicago to represent the Urban League movement at his services.
Yeah. So, and you talk about the huge hole, and that was another thing we talked about before you joined us. Was just what about that void in leadership, perhaps? Moving on. Now, we did have an African American female running for president. Okay, so there are black leaders out there.
And the difference today is leadership is held by a multitude of people: civil rights, politics, national, local. I think we need to understand that Jackson was most prominent, but he was not a sole leader or a singular leader over the last 50 years. And I think the impact is that he has spawned, like Martin Luther King spawned, a collection of, or a multitude of leaders who believe in what he stood for and who want to fight for what he stood for. And I think that's important. I think it's a little bit of a disingenuous for people to think about, will there be a singular leader who rise to prominence? I think that we need to understand the impact sometimes of a great man is how he's impacted others. Yeah. And the others he's impacted are many.
Okay. So, Urban League, nonpartisan.
Yes.
But politics come into play one way or the other.
Policy comes into play.
That's
See, this
what
is what's so
Clifton was saying.
important.
So you talk about the policies, not the candidate, but then, of course, people can figure out, is that candidate for this policy or not, and that's how they
And look, the bottom line is, we can't endorse any of them, but they can endorse our policies and what we stand for. And I have always approached things from the standpoint, and we have, that we do not have permanent friends, we do not have permanent enemies, we have permanent interests. But we're going to fight for our interests, and there are times when our interests are championed by one side more than the other. And that's just a reality, but we fight for the policy, whether it's fair wages, whether it's access to housing, whether it's a quality education, whether it's access to college, whether it's greenlining and not redlining, whether it's saying to American companies, give everyone a fair share for the job, for the opportunity, for the promotion, for the seat in the boardroom. That's what we fight for.
Economics, so important. He's been on this program several times when we talk about the role that the Urban League plays with regard to getting jobs, good jobs, education, and I think you're right. That in any election, people are going to be voting their pocketbook, period, anyway. But leveling the playing field and providing the opportunities for disenfranchised to get jobs. That's what it's about in Nashville, right?
That's what it's about in Nashville.
And that's at the national scale.
And let me say this. To me, that's what America's about. Economic opportunity, a level playing field in truth and in fact. And one of the reasons why Nashville is a growing city at a time when many cities are struggling to find a formula for growth. And so I think one of the things I'm so interested to learn more is the way in which Clifton and the Urban League of Middle Tennessee and others are making sure that those pathways to technology, to artificial intelligence, to biotech. I ran into a young man on the elevator who is an executive with a biotech firm, and we were talking about some of the work that they're doing. I mean, this is what this is about. And so this is also an opportunity for Nashville to showcase its approach, its strategy, its policy, its commitment to equity, its commitment to equal opportunity to an audience from all over the nation. And so Nashville, like Houston, like New Orleans, like Cleveland. When we were in Cleveland, the mayor of Cleveland called me a week before the conference and he said, I want to host all of your major corporate trustees and sponsors in my office because I want to talk to them about what we're doing here in Cleveland. So we went over, about 25 of us, and he put on a very impressive presentation to talk about the future of Cleveland and economic opportunities in Cleveland. So a lot of times cities, I remember Boston, look at the Urban League Conference as a way to leverage their future growth and their future strategy. So we'll see what you and the leadership here, how do you want to meet the moment?
I don't know. I know you talked to the mayor in the past. Do you think you'll be in touch with the mayor here in Nashville, or have you already been?
I will be following Clifton's
what do you
guide.
think, Clifton?
I mean, we will definitely be talking to the mayor here in Nashville.
Yeah. I mean, come on. You were a mayor. You know,
as well as the mayor in Memphis, Knoxville, and Chattanooga.
So in a way, this is happening in Nashville, but obviously all the major cities in Tennessee.
Well, we're proud to have a huge presence in Tennessee.
Right.
We're in Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville, and Memphis, and I know all of our Urban League leaders, all of our affiliates in the state are excited about this conference, ready to rally behind Nashville, but it's also about Tennessee, and you know, and that's a mixed story, because there's efforts to suppress the vote in Tennessee, and then there's resistance to those efforts. And so we obviously are going to be part of that resistance, but it's a chance for people to understand how in a state like Tennessee, in a city like Nashville or Memphis or Chattanooga, how you navigate, how you strategize, because central to us is our mission. Our mission doesn't change because the White House changes. Our mission doesn't change because the political winds shift. Our mission has remained the same since 1910. It's enduring, it's a legacy, and it's what guides us.
Membership growing?
Membership growing, particularly online followers,
I was wondering,
are growing significantly.
And by the way, you were mentioning that people will be able to watch the convention. If they can't come, it'll be streamed. It'll be on there for everyone to see. You have a busy day ahead of you. It is a pleasure meeting you. I wish we had the whole hour with you, but that was plenty.
When I come back, we'll come back.
You should, if you don't mind. We'll do it when you're in town that week. But it is an honor to have you on, Mark. Thank you for coming.
Appreciate you.
Safe travels to Chicago.
We got a gem here. In Clifton, and the work he's doing.
He's a good egg.
Yeah.
I'll be back to wrap things up right after this. Thank you, gentlemen.